In today's My Hero Academia video, we talk about the hinted possibility that All For One might return to his prime, as it seems that due to a mysterious connection with the Rewind quirk, he suddenly has the ability to completely heal old wounds. And we'll show you why this is important for the conclusion of Endeavor's storyline, and how it could be a great importance for the plot development for the final Boku no Hero Academia arc. If you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! In the last chapter of Endeavor's battle against All For One, something very strange happened. Endeavor managed to completely destroy All For One by burning him to ashes. All For One literally disintegrated. But then he suddenly started talking again and said that he could take this risk because his current body is disposable anyway. And this near-death experience was apparently necessary to test something that now enabled him to regenerate fully. At least it looks like it, because he grows a new ear, which he actually lost in the fight against All Might. Of course, at first glance, it looks like the super regeneration quirk, but this quirk is nothing special in My Hero Academia, because we have already seen this ability at the beginning of the series. But for All For One, this ability has always been more or less useless, because the main reason why he is no longer in his prime form is because of the injuries that All Might inflicted on him in their first fight, in which both of them were injured so badly that neither of them would ever be in their prime again, and thus were also forced to look for a successor to the One For All and All For One quirk. The point is that All For One only received the super regeneration ability after his fight with All Might, and due to the limitation of this ability, which allows the user to only regenerate injuries that occurred after receiving the ability, he was never able to heal the injuries that All Might inflicted on him and was therefore forced to wear this mask. We are not going to talk about how it is possible that he can suddenly heal his old injuries, or what exactly he did to achieve this. For that, you will have to watch the video linked in the comments. Today we just want to talk about the possibilities and the meaning or the consequences that a return of All For One in his prime can have. When you think about it, it's all a bit strange. All For One wants to merge with Shigaraki to become the ultimate demon lord, which has been the goal for a very long time, and has always been presented as the next big step in the plan, with that transformation also almost complete. And yet suddenly we get such an unexpected banger as the possible return of prime All For One. Of course, it is not yet confirmed that All For One can really heal himself, but this possibility cannot be ignored. Could this be a bait? Is Horikoshi playing with us? And if not, then maybe it's just a nice fan service. Or is it actually important to the plot development, meaning we could actually predict events more accurately if we understand why this is happening? So firstly, could it be a bait? We need to understand that All For One has confirmed that he cannot fight without the mask. He can defend himself as best as he can and maybe make a few desperate attempts to attack. But ultimately, any strong hero with enough support should be able to defeat him, because without the mask his movements are severely limited, so it's really no big deal. So what's the point for him to heal from the injuries Endeavor inflicted on him if the mask has already burned to ashes? Fine, he would heal, but he would immediately die again since he simply can't move properly without a mask. I just don't understand why Horikoshi will do that. The only reason healing makes sense at this point is if he can even heal the injuries he received from All Might, thus fixing his problem with the mask. And as mentioned, the healed ear clearly points to that possibility, so it really doesn't look like it's a bait. So could it just be fan service? I mean, we never saw him in his prime, only in a very vague flashback where you couldn't even see his face. So the fact that his face was always hidden and never really shown is a hint at the possibility that Horikoshi actually planned from the beginning to return All For One to his prime, and basically fully reveal his true face in the final arc. Why else would Horikoshi have hidden All For One's face all this time, even at the time before he received these injuries? This speaks not only for fan service, but also for an actual relevance to the plot. And this also makes sense, since now it seems like the entire Shihasaikai arc was also created just for the quirk destruction drug and the introduction of the Rewind quirk, so that All For One could then eventually somehow, in some way, use that knowledge to fully heal himself. It is as if Horikoshi has planned exactly that all along, so it's plot relevant. The last and most important question to answer is why? What is the point? The consequences that might result from it? The most obvious reason why All For One might have returned to his prime is Endeavor. It's no longer a surprise that the Todoroki family has stolen the spotlight of the series, definitely putting themselves in the position of being one of the most important plot points of the entire series. I think it's safe to say that the Todoroki family plot is definitely part of the main plot of My Hero Academia, as it directly intersects with All For One's plans. And then of course there's Endeavor, who has dedicated his entire life to surpassing All Might and thus has always strived for power and the ultimate quirk, to fulfill what he himself could not. But after changing his whole personality, admitting that he was wrong, accepting his weakness and also giving up his dream of surpassing All Might, and then even setting a new goal to defeat All For One, he is thus confronted again, even if it is only unintentionally, with his old ambitions to surpass All Might, because he was the only one who managed to defeat All For One, which is now Endeavor's new goal. So he's forced to compare himself with All Might once again. It's crazy. And as if that wasn't enough, All For One had also symbolically underlined this comparison by comparing Endeavor and their fight to his first fight with All Might, thus directly comparing Endeavor to Prime All Might. And that's a big deal because that actually brings Endeavor's roots to all his suffering back to the surface, something that he really didn't want to be part of his life anymore. Endeavor is trying to change, but he's stuck in this situation where he has no choice but to prove that he's on the same level as All Might, even if that's not his direct goal anymore. That's very ironic. And if All For One has really somehow gained the ability to heal all his wounds, then it's safe to say that All For One could even reach a whole new level, surpassing even his old power, because in the fight against All Might he couldn't regenerate at all. So this will be very difficult for Endeavor, physically as well as psychologically, of course. And now we come to a rather controversial part even for us, but we just have to discuss it on the basis of what we said in one of our old theories. We mentioned that if Eri's quirk becomes relevant in some abstract way in the near future, even if it's just a random flashback, anything to do with the Rewind quirk, especially if it happens in the last war, then we need to discuss this theory again based on the current situation in the manga. In fact, in the context of this theory, we even predicted that Eri's Rewind quirk would become indirectly relevant, and it happened, so we have no choice. It's actually one of our biggest theories on this channel, namely that All Might has made the stockpiling quirk, which is a quirk that is part of One For All, his own quirk. So he made it his own quirk. This is important, the stockpiling quirk, not One For All itself. So if Eri were to use Rewind on All Might could use the stockpiling quirk again without One For All. I repeat this because so many people leave comments like, he can't use One For All because it's already transferred to Deku. If that's your thought, then you didn't understand the theory. Forget One For All and focus on the stockpiling quirk. The main idea behind this theory was that All Might can fight one last time in the last war of My Hero Academia, because as we know, he might die because of the prophecy of Sir Nighteye. So the prophecy can only come true if All Might actually fights. Of course, the prophecy doesn't necessarily come true, but Horikoshi intentionally left that possibility open, so we can always remember that All Might could still be in danger. Honestly, in our opinion, it might actually be too late for All Might to return, but we promised you to talk about it when the time comes, and we can't ignore that we actually also predicted that Eri will become indirectly relevant, so we are true to our word. But before Yami continues with this part of the Boku no Hero Academia theory, please take a moment to leave a like, it really helps us a lot. Thank you.
Even though the actual essence of this plot development could be the conclusion of Endeavor's redemption and his life goal to surpass All Might, it could still have consequences and thus possible significance for the climax of My Hero Academia series. For example, All Might, he can monitor all events and thus could probably see and perhaps even understand how All For One could return to his prime. We still haven't heard how exactly Eri and the quirk destruction drug has anything to do with All For One's possible return to his prime. But if this is explained in future chapters, it will probably be because of a typical villain speech in which All For One explains everything. At that moment, All Might would then understand that Eri has the power to make such a return to his prime possible. For the following part, we need a quick off-topic explanation for context. The transfer quirk originally belonged to Yoichi, the first One For All user, but by obtaining the stockpiling quirk from All For One, a resonance has been made between the two quirks, creating the One For All quirk. And so, we once theorized that All Might could have made the stockpiling quirk, which is as mentioned one of the two quirks that originally combined to create the One For All quirk, his own quirk when he first received One For All. This could be because for some reason the stockpiling quirk did not have a previous user stored within its quirk factor. Otherwise, this user would have been manifested as a vestige in the One For All realm, just as the second main essence of the One For All quirk, that is the transfer quirk has manifested Yoichi, the first user of One For All, as a vestige within the One For All realm. So the stockpiling quirk has not yet stored a vestige in its own quirk factor. So maybe All Might somehow managed to make the stockpiling quirk his own because it did not have an owner yet and was therefore then able to give part of his own soul to the quirk factor of the stockpiling quirk, which then allowed him to manifest a vestige in the One For All realm. Just like the other previous users of One For All explain why their vestiges are manifested in the One For All quirk. Although the vestiges describe this phenomena as if All Might had given a part of his own soul to the One For All quirk itself. They also mention that he was the only one so far to actually make One For All his own quirk. The vestiges have proven several times that they do not know how One For All actually works, and they learn with each new event or understand how their old assumptions were often wrong. So it is not far-fetched to assume that they may not understand that All Might can manifest a vestige in One For All, not because he has made One For All his own quirk, but only the stockpiling quirk. Anyway, the point is, if this theory is correct and for some reason it happens that Eri rewinds All Might's body, then theoretically he should not only heal his old injuries but also be able to use the stockpiling quirk. By that, we don't mean One For All, but only the stockpiling quirk, which is a small part of One For All. It's strange that even after a relatively long time after All Might had already transferred One For All to Deku, he was still able to use the stockpiling quirk ability, almost as if the reason why he slowly lost the ability to use that power was not because he gave up One For All, but because of the injuries he received from All For One, which damaged his body so that he could no longer use the stockpiling quirk ability. We saw that he already had problems using this quirk even before he transferred One For All to Deku. He has also confirmed that the time in which he can use the quirk is getting shorter and shorter. So it is very likely that if All Might never had passed One For All, he would still not be able to use a stockpiling quirk anymore. What I'm saying is that if that's the case, and All Might sees what Eri's rewind attribute could do to All For One, he might get the idea to at least try rewinding his body and see what the result is. All Might at least has to be curious as to why he became a vestige, although it really shouldn't be possible since he himself has no quirk to pass on to One For All, allowing his vestige to manifest in the first place. However, by having a vestige, he might get the idea that he could actually have a quirk, or as we theorized, could have made the stockpiling quirk his own. So this would be a possible consequence of One For All's possible return to his prime. And honestly, this is probably also the last chance that the theory of All Might rewinding his body could ever come true. So if that doesn't happen now, it probably never will, and we can then close this theory for good. But that wouldn't be a bad thing, as it would also contribute positively to the plot, since the spotlight now belongs to the new generation. And that also brings us to the next possibility. Another reason and consequence for the return of Prime All For One could be the elimination of the number one hero, the only person who seems to be able to stop All For One and also be a great help in the final battle against the ultimate demon lord. So for the new generation to come into the spotlight, Endeavor must either be badly injured or simply die. An injury similar to the one All Might suffered in the first fight against Prime All For One could be a good reference to finally end Endeavor's story. If Endeavor succeeds in defeating All For One once and for all, leaving him with only his consciousness in Shigaraki, but Endeavor himself sustains a very serious injury, not only would the plot take a big step forward, but it would also prevent Endeavor, who is currently the strongest hero, from getting in the way of the main characters of the series, who deserve to be the focus in the final arc. This is also why All Might shouldn't really return, at most only for one last fight, but not forever, because it's Deku who has to save the world. Of course, there are many other possibilities, such as All For One simply defeating everyone and heading towards Shigaraki, as he hinted a few chapters ago. The only reason we might doubt the return of Prime All For One is actually a very ridiculous reason, and yet very understanding, is that if he were to be completely healed, he would be completely naked, since Endeavor burned all of his clothes. That would be really strange if All For One suddenly appears to be completely naked for the rest of the fight. But who knows, All For One is the master of hundreds of quirks. He would probably find a way to cover his body. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think that All For One is really back in his prime? And if so, what is the reason? Does it have something to do with Endeavor? Or maybe with All Might? Let us know. That's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.